I'm thrilled to introduce to the stage next Dirk Lehmann, who is going to be talking about platform engineering XXL. So for those of you who were in the room yesterday, we had a fabulous talk from Ria and Nick about the human aspects of platform engineering. What Dirk is going to share with us today is what that looks like when you have tens of thousands of developers that you want to adopt your internal platform. I'm looking forward to this talk. I think we're just about ready to go. And it's over to Dirk.
All right. Thank you so much. So my name is Dirk Lehmann. I'm organizing DevOps Days Zurich. Besides working at a company called SAP, since quite a long time, I'm a solution manager for the internal developer platform at SAP. I do a lot of DevOps things. Please connect with me if you like. SAP, you might have heard about SAP, and maybe you have not. Doesn't matter. But if you heard about it, you might know it's a big company. But that's a relative term, like what does big mean? And so I compiled this slide for it. SAP is 50 years old, so it's not really a startup in IT terms, I would say. We are doing business software, so anything that you need to run your company. So every company has financials, right? There's money going in and out. There's always some employees, whatever relation you have with that. There's mostly some supply chain stuff gets in, there's logistics and all of that. You can buy at SAP. We do this for 26 industry, healthcare, public, insurance, public sector, oil and gas, what have you. And we sell our software in over 180 countries, and we translate it in over 30 languages. Why I tell you that, you will see in a second. When I say we are over 100,000 employees, out of which around 36,000 are in R&D, so research and development. And this is like then the maximal addressable market of my internal development platform, right? So when I address my internal developers with my platform, it's 36,000, roughly 36,000 people. Technology-wise, SAP is somewhat split into two halves. There's one half that is using ABAP. ABAP is our own proprietary language since over 14 years. ABAP is an abbreviation for Allgemeiner Berichtsaufbereitungsprozessor. I know everyone loves German words, so if we could please repeat after me, Allgemeiner Berichtsaufbereitungsprozessor. There's also an English abbreviation, but it's not so much fun as Allgemeiner Berichtsaufbereitungsprozessor. And it's specialized for business applications. And it's somewhat a platform inside the SAP system. It has its own lifecycle management, its transport management, editor, test environment, all of that is inside the SAP system. It's kind of like a closed world. Still, they are using parts of the internal developer platform that I work for. The other part is more the stuff that you are most likely more familiar with, Java, JavaScript, Python, Go, C. There is no guideline at SAP which programming language that we use. I know some companies do that. I see benefits in both approaches, but we don't do that. It's somewhat a 50-50 split. And then, we do stuff for on-premise, so run it in your own data center, cloud, hybrid, mobile. So that's why I call the platform engineering XXL, because I think that kind of scale thing and context that we do this is quite unique. When you look at the situation of development or product development teams at SAP a couple of years back, you saw that central organizations, many, provide central services and tools to the product teams. Like security department is serving security tools. Legal department is serving licensing tools. There's another department doing source code management. And for sure there is redundant offerings. And then the teams just pick and choose whatever they think fits to them. And if there is not a central offering, they use open source. And open source is great, right? And contributing to open source is even greater. The problem with open source, and we had this already yesterday, this is quite a lot. This is just the cloud native computing foundation landscape. So this is just a subset of like all the stuff that you could use. And look what happened. This is the 2016 version. the 2018 version, the 2020 version, the 2023 version. This is a Cambrian explosion of cloud-native tooling. And I doubt that there's one person in the world who can tell me all the pros and cons of all these individual tools. And even if there is, that doesn't help me, because I don't need a tool. I need a tool chain. If the best CI/CD orchestrator does not plug in with my scanning tool, that doesn't help me. It's a system. It's an end-to-end flow of things. It needs to work together, so I need a tool chain. And that thing is a quantitative thing, and it's good, but it doesn't help my customers. And I think this is a problem that we have, or that you might also have, despite the fact whether you have 3, 30, 300, 3,000, or 36,000 engineers. So tools is a problem. Another problem is, especially in larger company, is compliance regulations. I give you an example. I said we are serving over 180 countries. That means we have to adhere to all the legal regulations of over 180 countries. So if the EU does a trade embargo with some other country, we need to follow that. So we need to know what is built in our software, which components are in, what is their ECCN number, so their export classification, before we can ship that. And this is not negotiable. So some of these requirements are not negotiable because it's a legal context. Others are. For example, as said, we translate into 30 languages. That means translating the text, but also supporting right-to-left languages like Hebrew and Arabic, but also supporting things like the imperial Japanese calendar. This is something we can negotiate, like, okay, we do this in the second version, but not in the first version. And then besides these compliance regulations, we have guidelines. Guidelines for everything. Guidelines for architecture, for support, for documentation. And some of them apply to all of SAP, some of them apply only to some products or product groups. And for sure, the guidelines as well as the compliance regulations, they change. All day they change. And so some people said, and I was part of that when I started at SAP, that's all rubbish. We just need to get rid of that crap. No one cares. But turns out, many people care. Many of our customers care. This is part of the deal why they buy software from us, because we have certifications in place and make sure that we can translate it and support their local cases. This is part of our business case, so it will not go away. The problem with that is simply that in the last years we shifted things left, and that increased the cognitive load of the development teams, because they started now taking more care about, what's the right tool chain for my build delivery, and how do I monitor my Kubernetes cluster, and I'm on the latest recommendation page of our support guideline and stuff. And they do less of the things that is their primary duty, solving customer problems. So this wouldn't be such a big problem if it's only one team, but we have hundreds of teams in an engineering organizations of 36,000 people. And it's not only a problem that hundreds of teams face that problem. The problem is hundreds of teams face the problem, and they give you 1,000 solutions to that very same problem. And this is, from a business perspective, a huge problem, because our products run sometimes for decades on customer side. And if the product runs for decades, the whole tool chain, the supply chain, so to say, for that product runs for decades. So this is a problem, and it's piling up. So how to address that? Hyperspace. Hyperspace is the name of our IDP, internal developer platform. Hyperspace was created around 3 years back, and I'm spoiling here, it's not done. I'm not sure whether we will ever be done with that, but we are doing this in 3 years. I think that's the message. When I say we, it's currently around 350 people. So target headcount for end of the year is 400 people. 400 people building SAP's IDP. It takes care about software development and delivery. So everything that is basically planning, coding, building, testing, validating, deploying, releasing your code. It doesn't take care about the runtime. So monitoring, observability, IT service management, all of that is not part of Hyperspace. It's another platform. So if you double-click into Hyperspace, then you would see, and this is kind of history, how it's created. We had tools, then on top of tools we created pipeline templates and libraries on that. then paved roads, and I will talk a little bit about that later, what I mean with that, and then a portal. A portal is like, if you know Backstage from Spotify, I think it's now CNCF, a portal to access all of these services from the IDP. But let's look into the paved road thingy, because I think from platform engineering-wise, this is a pretty smart move. Pardon me. Sometimes it's called golden paths. I also found mixtures of like paved paths and golden roads, so feel free to mix it up. The aim is always the same. It is to provide guidance, maybe opinionated guidance for the teams. It could be documentation, it could be templates, something that addresses this problem of harmonization, the problem that I said earlier, like you have hundreds of teams, they find thousands of solutions. You try to give them some kind of templates, documentation, hints, guidance thing. This is the best way we know how to solve that problem. So let's go back let's start, how did we approach this paved road, or how did we implement this paved road approach? The problem was, as I said, there is plenty of tools, and those tools are related to compliance processes and guidelines, and honestly, no one really understood how this relation was. So like which tool depends on which process is using which tools, the tools between each other. So we said, we have a very good idea, let's do a workshop with all the experts. All experts in a room, 2-day workshop, and we try to untangle that mess. 2 days workshop. All the experts, really, we had them all. Didn't work. We cannot untangle the beast. It is the inconvenient truth that we have created something with our tools and our processes over the last decades that we cannot easily untangle, because it depends always on the context. Well, in a mobile case, you have to use this and that. In a cloud case, you have to do this and that. In another case, you have to do this. And it always depends. So this is kind of frustrating. So what we did is we said, okay, let's go one step back. What are the common tasks that all teams, development teams, product teams at SAP have in common, and let's try to address them as a value stream. So we created value streams. We call them development procedures for reasons, for certain tasks. Like a certain task, what I mean is like you want to use an open source library. Now you might be in a startup saying, well, I use the open source library, what's the big deal? In a company, multinational company like us, it's like, okay, you have to make sure that your software bill of material is always current. You have to make sure that you have the expert classification number of that open source library at hand, because it influences your own export classification number, which basically is a measure to tell people whether we can export it to certain countries or not. You need to make sure that there are no known vulnerabilities, security vulnerabilities for that open source library, and for sure you need to prove that you have a process in place. If there is tomorrow a vulnerability known for that software, you can fix that. And for sure you need to make sure that you comply to all the requirements that come with the license. So with that, we already touch 4 compliance processes and a bunch of tools, and for sure no one is was in charge for this end-to-end process, because, as I said, security does security tools, licensing does licensing tools. And what we did with development procedures is we just asked the expert, what is the best way to get all these compliance measures in place to use compliantly that open source? So that is a trigger. I want to use open source, then I do various steps, and then I get the value. The value is I can use that open source in a compliant way. We described that. That's one development procedure. And then we did more. Like, how do I do my backlog management? How do I do security scanning? How do I do pen testing, security scanning, what have you? And then we combine them, and this we call a paved road in a certain context. So we have a paved road for building cloud applications. And it uses more or less the same development procedures as another paved road that tells you how to build web components, UI components. There's a slight difference in some development procedures, like we are doing pen testing not for UI components, but only for cloud products. But using open source is the very same, whether at the end the result is a UI component or a cloud product. This is how we do open source, inbound open source at SAP. So this is the thing that we do with our paved roads. Some learnings in the last minutes that I want to share with you. So currently we run over 14,000 CI/CD pipelines. So with I don't know how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of builds per day. A huge milestone I think that helped us a lot was organizational-wise, bundle all the forces, everyone who had tools, processes, yes, also processes, not only tools, from software development and delivery under one organization. It simply reduces a lot of friction and allowed us to install a product management team. I'm part of that product management team. I'm the solution manager, so we have a product management team because it's platform as a product. We are building a product, so you need a product management team. Paved roads, golden paths, I'm a big fan of that approach. Try to think about what are the common tasks, how could you standardize this certain task, at least to give people a guidance. If they think they know better, then here at your own risk, you can do it. But this is the way how we centrally think this is the best way you could do certain things. This all takes time. As I said, we're not done. It's a marathon. Don't start this as a half-year project, at least not in companies like this size. And it's never greenfield. I'm in contact with a lot of larger ships, also companies that do something similar, and they all say it's never a greenfield. We have gazillions of tools since we have since decades, and as I said, we need them to support the products that are still running with the customers. So we need to find a way how to incorporate them into the platform. There is no greenfield. We need to find a way how to do that in a smooth way, while the ship is running. It requires proper staffing, right? Don't start this as an inner source project. The simple reason, not that inner source is a bad idea, but it is you need to build trust in the platform and reliability. And reliability is not only in terms of availability, is the service up and running, can I use the service, and so on, but reliability and trust in regards to when a development team comes to us and says, we need certain features, that you can address them in a reasonable amount of time. Because if you can't, they will do shadow IT. They will build their own solution. You have friction again. So you need like the power of an organization that can say, yeah, in a reasonable amount of time, it's never tomorrow and it's always too late. Okay, but in a reasonable amount of time, we will implement what you need. And then you will need to share a vision with the customers. This is a product. When you buy an IT product, especially the more expensive ones, like the SAP ones, you are not only buying the product, you are buying a roadmap. So a lot of our customers are also buying a roadmap. Hyperspace is far away from being perfect, but Hyperspace sells a vision and a roadmap. We tell them what is next to do, and that resonates with our customers. So they buy a roadmap. So this needs to be clear, where do we want to go in the future with that thing? And something that is important, and we somehow did not the best job in that, we need to sell that vision also internally for these 350, 400 employees, to tell them, this is what we are doing, this is where we are heading to. So we started an idea of, we call it the Hyper Stories. It's a comic strip with personas and saying, look, this is the pipeline engineer. In some future, we are not saying this is next year, this isn't 2 years. In some future, using Hyperspace, when they have a security issue, using Hyperspace, they will address it like that. They don't jump in 5 tools and have to call 10 people. And no, Hyperspace provides them the information and they can do that within our portal. And then the last thing, and as definitely a thing for the open space later, is how to measure success of platforms. I talk, again, as I said, to a lot of companies that build like IDPs, and we're all scratching our heads, like, how do we measure success with that? Like, the easiest thing, and I'm hearing this often and often, is like, you measure adoption. Yes, sure, if the platform is a good thing, and by the way, never mandate a platform. Hyperspace is not mandatory. It's a product. You can use it if it makes sense to you internally. So adoption is a number you could measure easily, right? But, and yes, for sure, if the platform is good, people will jump on the platform. So adoption is some kind of a measurement of success of the platform, but it's not my goal with the platform to cover 100% of my development teams. Maybe 80% is already like a moonshot. What I try to do with the platform is to relieve development teams from cognitive load tasks, common tasks that they are all doing, on their own, that is a pain in the down south. This is what I'm trying to do with my platform. And it's hard to measure this. Yes, you can do surveys, but there's a lot of survey fatigue. Like you're sending it out to 1,000 people and 12 people answer like that. So I want definitely to have an open space about how to measure success of IDPs. And with that, I'm done. Thank you very much.